We've tried everything. There's nothing more that we can do. I heard those words, but between the unbearable pain and all of my organs shutting down, I didn't really know what my doctors meant until my family came into the room to say their final goodbyes, and a priest read me my last rites. I was 25 years old. Just 6 months earlier, I was a former college quarterback and a medical student, training to become an oncologist in memory of my mom who had passed away just a few years before, when I became suddenly ill with idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease. In a last-ditch effort to save my life, my doctors had given me a combination of 7 chemotherapies. Somehow, I survived. But I would go on to relapse and nearly die 4 more times in the next 3 years. I knew it was unlikely I could survive another one. My only hope would be to identify an existing drug that could be repurposed for me. I knew this was possible because many diseases share the same underlying mechanisms and can therefore be treated with the same drugs. So I began studying my own blood samples in the lab, and from within the data emerged a drug. It had been around for decades but had never been used for my disease, sirolimus. I began testing it on myself, and after nearly dying 5 times in 3 years, I've been in remission for over 9 years on this drug. Thank you. During this remission, I married the love of my life, have 2 beautiful children. I wrote a book about my journey chasing my cure, and I joined the faculty of the University of Pennsylvania to continue chasing cures. During this remission, we've identified and advanced 16 different drugs for diseases they were not intended for. Each patient on this screen is alive today because of a drug that wasn't meant for their disease that we repurposed to save their life. I'll mention briefly the patient on the bottom left of the screen, Michael. Michael was diagnosed with metastatic angiosarcoma and given a 3-month prognosis. Amazingly, 3 years earlier, research had been done to suggest that a treatment might be effective for his disease. But 3 years passed between research suggesting a drug could be used and us finding the study and beginning Michael as the first patient ever on this drug. Last month, April, marked 7 years that Michael has been in remission on this drug for angiosarcoma, and now this treatment is used worldwide for other patients with angiosarcoma. It was just sitting there waiting for us to find it. And while I'm so thankful for the progress we've made, there is still so much more work to be done. See, there are 3,000 FDA-approved drugs that are approved for about 3,000 diseases, but there's 9,000 more diseases that don't have a single FDA-approved therapy. That means that 1 in 10 of you and those you love either has or will develop a disease without a single treatment. And 1 in 3 of these kids will not survive until kindergarten. And though it's much faster and less expensive to repurpose drugs, and in many cases there's already data out there identifying ways they could be used in new ways, drugs like my own sit on the pharmacy shelf for decades because of 3 systemic problems. First, there's no databases connecting all the drugs with all the diseases they can potentially treat. Second, there are insufficient incentives for pharmaceutical companies to repurpose drugs, especially generic drugs and for rare diseases. And finally, no one is responsible for making sure that drugs are utilized for all the diseases they can treat. Not the NIH, not the FDA, not pharma, no one, until recently. About 6 months ago, we launched a nonprofit organization called Every Cure, which is on a mission to unlock the full potential of the world's knowledge to use every single FDA-approved drug to treat every single disease that it can possibly treat. We're linking together and utilizing the world's biomedical knowledge, both publicly available but also privately available, and working to integrate pharmaceutical company insights to generate a single score for every drug against every disease. What's the likelihood that every drug could potentially treat every disease? Utilizing the power of artificial intelligence, we've just been able to, for the first time in human history, generate all 36 million scores for how likely every drug is to treat every single one of these diseases. In the next 3 to 6 months, we'll be making that publicly available to the world. And we're using those prioritized scores to pick out which drugs do we want to take forward into which disease areas for clinical trials, and then to make sure they can be reimbursed by insurance companies, utilized by physicians and patients, and in some cases also additionally add new diseases to the label. And so with this first ever analysis we did to generate the 36 million scores, we were really pleased with the distribution of scores. And of course, you can imagine we zoomed in on Castleman disease, and we're really excited by what came out at the top. A drug called adalimumab. It's been around for many years, had never been used before for Castleman's, and the reason we were so excited to see adalimumab as the #1 drug for Castleman's is that just a couple months ago, we treated the first patient ever with Castleman disease named Alan with adalimumab. He was getting ready to go on to hospice and have a really difficult conversation with his young daughter about how he wouldn't be here any longer. And this drug, adalimumab, saved his life. And I can't even put into words for you what it's like. This is a drug that was always sitting on the pharmacy shelf, and utilizing the power of artificial intelligence, we were able to identify this drug for Alan, and he hasn't had to have that conversation with his young daughter. We are so excited about the other 36 million scores to go through. Some of the top hits we're excited about are folinic acid for autism spectrum disorder, metroleptin for anorexia, and bosutinib for ALS. But we've got a lot more work to do. We have amazing partners. We're thrilled that the Elevate Prize has been one of our earliest partners supporting the work that we're doing. But there's still so much work to be done to integrate additional data sets into our algorithm, to improve and optimize our scoring system, and to pick out 15 drugs that will be ready for clinical trials over the next 3 years. I hope you all will join us, contributing funding to support the work we're doing to advance these drugs, partnerships and data. If you work in a healthcare company, please do let me know. I hope you all will join me to unlock every cure so that every one of us can benefit from every drug possible, and so that no one is ever told we've tried everything when there's a life-saving cure on the pharmacy shelf. Thank you all so much. Thank you.